So we've got an image sent in by Jack Gray this time, goes by Nice Guy Travels on Instagram. So if we take a look at his Instagram page, we will look at the characteristics of a bit of his editing. So straight away, there's really strong fades to his image. I personally really like this style, just the real flat, super smooth, low clarity look, really natural looking. Personally really love that. That's probably a black down there in the original shot, but that's obviously very faded out, and then those whites aren't very bright either. And then as for tones, you can see like there's quite a few oranges. It's quite warm, and if it's not warm, it goes quite a cool blue in the highlights. Those blues really come out. So nice use of warm tones and blue tones, probably done in the split toning. And yeah, the main thing going on is going to be putting in that fade with the S curve, and then maybe shaping some light with filters and vignettes and stuff like that. We're actually going to be working with this shot right here. So as you can see, there's a vignette around it. We want the subject to pop out, and yeah, so let's get into this tutorial. If you guys like his work, his links are down in the description. You can check out his website as well. I'll link to that as well. And yeah, just let them know you found him through this tutorial, and let's get into this edit. Raw image, edited one from his Instagram. So first thing, settings, how he shot this, 50mm, probably the right focal length to just include the background here, and then 1.8 f-stop, so blurry foreground, and then quite a blurry background there too, and then a low ISO because it's bright conditions, and then a really fast shutter speed just to expose the image correctly and not lose any detail in those highlights there. Okay, so the first thing is apply a preset. I'll just show you the curves preset. So this curve here will give you a nice fade to the blacks. So the main thing going on is the lift to the blacks here, and then we just zoom in on his image. You can see how much of a fade there is there, especially in the foreground there. We want to achieve the same amount of that. So bringing up the black point, watch what happens. That real fade, and we just want to match it up with his one. So up about that much, and then the whites as well. Just cap them off, keep them a little flat. So probably the brightest area is this little bit down here. You can see how that just gets flattened out a bit, and that just creates that fade you see to the image. And then shadows have got to come down a bit just to keep a bit of contrast, otherwise you're just sort of lifting your entire image. And then as for the color channels, so we've just got a real simple curve in the red, green and blue channel, and as I said, his style doesn't have much contrast to it, so we've just got a really simple bump in the highlights and shadows, and each curve is exactly the same. So in this case, these color channels are just adding in a tiny bit of contrast into the image, so that wraps up the curves. Right up here, first of all, let's just cool down the image. You can see we've got a lot of greens, and it's just a lot of yellows even in our whites, so let's drop that. Okay, so I think those tones look way more natural with the temperature drop there. Let's bring up the shadows. So highlights will add that real flatness to your image and keep heaps of detail in the brighter areas. Whites for a little bit of a pop. Just drop exposure. Right, blacks. Whites. Okay, clarity. He has a very soft texture to his image. A bit of a glow as well, so bloomed highlights. So clarity will probably do that for you. Just drop that. And then his subject really pops, so we're gonna have to add some clarity back into our subject later. And then also the tones of his image don't pop that much, so vibrance down, saturation down. Okay, so far we've just got like a nice flattening to our image. Creates a nice flatness. It's pretty well exposed. We just need to like enhance the lighting with like filters and brushes and stuff. Let's firstly do some more colors. So I'm going to come right down the bottom to calibration here. And what I see all the time when trying to get brown tones in your image is shifting the blue primary. I did a tutorial who is Benjamin. He does this as well. He has really nice brown tones. So let's just get some brown tones into the image. And what it does, it sort of shifts all your colors closer to a red, and then a red and an orange is probably the closest color you've got to brown, so just brings in slightly more browns if you do that. So let's run with that. And then I won't do profile corrections because we have such a pretty strong vignette over in our image there. Let's come to split toning. So this will be really important for our tones. Let's add in way more blues. We want way more blues up in the highlights there. And then obviously quite warm brown tones in the shadows. Like you can see that down here a lot. Like those tones aren't in there originally. We need to put them in there with split toning. And then we'll play with the balance. So after you add in your split toning, it's quite often a good idea just to play with this a bit. And I'm just gonna push it towards more blues into the entire image, and those warm tones will be kept a bit more into the blacks and shadows by shifting it this direction. Okay, so I'm going to come in and try to make the image pop with some filters and brushes and stuff, but just before I do that, I think there's some obvious things that will contribute to making our image pop, and that's the luminance or brightness of certain colors. I bring up the luminance of the oranges a lot, yellows as well. You can see how that just creates real pop to our image. Bit of greens, and just bring back some of those blues. Okay, we'll just bring out those oranges a lot. And then they obviously look a little too yellow or green, so let's just go this way. Okay, the tones are looking pretty good now. Okay, so we need to do a bit more shaping to the light. So filters and brushes, I've already placed them for this. Let's grab this one up here. So I'll show you where it's affecting. And we just want to bring out more clouds, make the image a bit more interesting. Okay, so just drop exposure, we'll bring in lots more detail. Whites for a bit more of a pop to those clouds. And some dehaze will really bring them out as well. Okay, it's a bit too dark at the moment. Let's get this other one here, and press O, affecting the top again, and let's just drop the dehaze. Let's create that nice haze or like glowy effect he has to his images. And then clarity does that as well. See how it gives that glow. Drop that, and then what I see all the time is a darkening of the bottom of the image, especially if you've got a subject just above it, because it just draws your eye upward in the image to the subject. So we'll just do that. Then shadows, let's darken it, but like I don't want to drop black so it look too harsh. So shadows, I think we're good. Okay, so radial filters now. Let's grab these. Let's start with this big one. And if I press O, it's actually affecting the outside of the circle. So it's actually coming around here. It's a little bit out of the image. We'll run with that, and then the feathering is brought up, and then it will just affect the bottom there. So let's darken the bottom. Just help out what we did in the last one. Shadows again. And that's just gonna have a more gradual effect. As you can see, it like darkened a bit further up in the image. Blacks, let's ease up on that. Lifting the blacks will really bring out that fade there too. A little less harsh. Clarity down. Again, we want that softness and glow he has. Okay, let's do our final one. Over top of the subject. So let's grab this one. So affecting everywhere apart from the subject pretty much, and then we'll do one more to make the subject pop. So this one, I just want to soften things up. Let's just bring up dehaze. Bring down the dehaze to add in more haze. Okay, and just one more on our subject here. So O inside. Let's bring up the shadows. Just so we can see our subject better, make it stand out. Pop the whites. Clarity, so this is where we're going to get that crispness to the subject, and then like such a nice glow to everything else is just by applying clarity to the subject. And then let's just bring them out with some more saturation too. And then obviously this is quite feathered, so you're not going to see that harsh line around your subject. So really feather it out to get that nice gradual effect. So we might be looking a little too harsh up in the sky. Let's just pull back the exposure a bit. So yeah, we're a bit too blue up in the sky, so let's like drop our blues here quite a bit just to match that up. Aqua's the same. Greens, there's only a tiny bit of greens. I think they're more registered as yellows, but we'll drop those. There's only a tiny bit though. Yellows, ease up on them. Oranges are good. Purples, magentas, tiny bit on the tongue. I always bring the purples and magentas pretty much roughly in line with everything else. And then maybe our sky looks a little too bright, just tiny bit. Drop that a touch. That'll do. Yeah, I think we're pretty close. If we just hit reset, there's our before and after. I'll just try to keep this one nice and quick, guys. Oranges really bringing out the subject there with the luminance. Orange in the shadows, blue in the highlights. Yeah, and